Hello again, YouTubers. I'm with SpongeBob 101 back here again on the SpongeBob channel. Today we are reviewing SpongeBob episode 277, Captain Pipsqueak and Plane to Sea. Synopsis states, Plankton joins the League of E.V.I.L. Also, SpongeBob and Patrick take Squidward on a plane to a tropical resort. Let's dive right in. Captain Pipsqueak is a typical Plankton attempting to steal the formula kind of episode, but with a very unique twist, considering that he's always been declaring himself an evil genius. Karen finally proposes that he actually join a villainous team, in this case, E.V.I.L. Every villain is lemons. Plankton does heed that advice, gets his supervillain costume, and heads over to dumpster dive in search of the secret lair in the trash. He then realizes that auditions are being held to determine the next member of E.V.I.L. This is where a whole lot of fan service and throwbacks occur. We have Dennis, the Tattletale Strangler, Earworm, Nosferatu, Doodlebob, and even Prawn. Yeah, the mini-boss from the Battle for Bikini Bottom video game. So kind of random that they are all there. Most of them make sense. I found this to be a very unique addition, but also a bit iffy because, again, you had characters like Squidward and the Viking dude. I'm not sure why they're there. So, yeah. The auditions do begin, and the Strangler, Nosferatu, and Robot Mantis all go down. I particularly liked how Robot Mantis could turn different musical instruments into others, but that's clearly not a very useful evil ability. Plankton presents his grand plan of world domination, to which Man Ray and the rest of E.V.I.L. actually find quite convincing. This allows Plankton to get his villain name, Captain Pipsqueak, which does sound quite demeaning, but Plankton doesn't seem to mind, and then advance to the real-life test stage. The first test, get some lunch from Super Weenie Hut Jr. Well, I wasn't expecting to see that, not even normal Weenie Hut Jr. After Plankton's order of a 25-pound bucket with extra evil sauce goes awry because he is refused service, somehow Plankton manages to convince them to hand over the goods, so that works out. How did he do so? Guess we'll never know. He probably stole it after sneaking away from the fight with the security bouncers. The second test is to deliver a smoking hot gift to superhero The Foot. Not only did The Foot step on it, because of Plankton's added chum, The Foot literally blows up. This earns the final stamp of approval on Captain Pipsqueak's admission to evil as their genius mastermind. So what's the next step? Steal the Krabby Patty formula, of course. I mean, you guys probably expected this, right? They barge into the Krusty Krab and demand the formula. It goes swimmingly, with the dirty bubble trapping SpongeBob, Krabs, and Squidward, while Man Ray helps himself to the formula, only to realize that it is a formula for sandwiches, not world domination. So Plankton's self-interests catch up with him almost immediately as E.V.I.L. chooses the tasty allure of Krabby Patties over Plankton in a heartbeat. The episode ends with Captain Pipsqueak burning up in the same bottle of extra evil sauce he helped to procure earlier. So plot-wise, this gets a 7 out of 10. I enjoy the various twists and turns that the writers added to spice up this Plankton scheme, including the actual existence of the evil lair, auditions, I mean, who would have expected that, and the couple of tests that Plankton had to pass. Clearly it was meant for the fun of evil, but yeah, alas, the ending was to be expected from the start. So yeah, animation gets a 8 out of 10. Great overall. I think the best parts of the episode in the animation context are the portions where Plankton, decides to become a villain. It's kind of funny when he tries to choose his appropriate costume. The actual villain lair being accessible via the dumpster and Plankton dumpster diving in it, and the ensuing audition. We also got one explosion, but I can't get super excited over the ending where villains just break into the Krusty Krab and use a laser to retrieve the formula. Unique characteristics gets a 9 out of 10 though, purely because of the return of so many iconic characters, including Dennis from the first SpongeBob movie, of course. Too bad he's just a doorman now. It would have been cool to see Dennis as one of the E.V.I.L. team as well. So that means Captain Pipsqueak gets a 24 out of 30 from me. Moving on to Plane to Sea. I am fascinated about commercial airliners. I do have airplane videos on the Other Stuff channel if you guys are interested. So I'm a little bit biased here, but let's take a look at this episode nonetheless. So this episode begins with a view of the home lane in an art style that vaguely reminds me of scenery and backgrounds in the first 3 seasons, and it is something I really appreciate. Side note, is it just me, or do the characters in this episode look a lot like what they were in the SpongeBob picture books of the early 2000s? Let me know in the comments. SpongeBob and Patrick let Squidward know that he won a family trip to Bora Bora Bottom. Keyword there, family. Because the trade-off is that SpongeBob and Patrick will be tagging along as the kids. My initial expectation for this episode was for half of it to feature the journey and the rest to feature SpongeBob and Patrick messing up the vacation experience thereafter, just like what they did in Enchanted Tiki Dreams. But it turns out that what the episode focused on was entirely the former portion. This starts off with Squidward being squished in the middle seat with no way to swap seats without attracting the ire of the flight attendant, who happens to really not like Squidward. The plane takes off and ascends with a 90-degree angle, rock bottom reference here, I don't know, before leveling out, and once the seatbelt signs go off, Patrick and SpongeBob start wandering through the cabin being nuisances. One of the few funny instances of this episode comes 12 hours later, with Patrick wandering off to the washroom only to open the aircraft exit door, which causes one of the flight attendants to literally be sucked out. And the flight attendant's just like, oh, okay, parachute, I'm just gonna read a book after that. How stupid can that be on Patrick's part? This repeats itself with the other flight attendant that doesn't like Squidward, and then Patrick replaces them as the flight attendant. So what happened to going to the bathroom? That was his whole point, right? I guess if he really meant going to the bathroom outside, he's pretty smart not to let himself outside. With Squidward held captive by the seatbelt, flight attendant Patrick engages in harming Squidward by literally dumping hot coffee into his mouth. This was probably the funniest and stupidest moment of the episode for me. Poor Squidward though. SpongeBob volunteers to be a flight attendant too, just randomly showing up from one of the overhead bins. And they bring out the snare cards, only to smash right into Squidward, of course. Finally, Squidward demands to be taken to the captain to file a complaint and is dragged along accordingly. Man, they're really torturing Squidward in this one. I'm not sure if it was intended, but it seems as if the writers were mocking the style in which pilots make announcements. That didn't matter for long anyway, since both pilots were promptly sent to the bathroom, outside, by good old Patrick. With no one flying the plane, Squidward frantically tries to bring the plane to land with cheerleaders SpongeBob and Patrick behind him. This is such a silly scene. Man, you guys had to watch this just because you gotta see how silly this is. To Squidward's relief, they do land at Bora Bora Bottom safely, and right when Squidward is getting ready to soak up some sun, it turns out that the plane was on autopilot the whole time, and the whole journey was just half of the journey. In fact, all Squidward won was a trip to see Bora Bora Bottom. The plane automatically makes a U-turn and takes off bound for Bikini Bottom. Yeah, what an ending. Although I did expect some elements of a Annoy Squidward episode to be part of Plane to See, my expectations were not met. The plot gets a 6 out of 10. I thought the initial portion of the story really made a whole lot of sense, but a twist at the end, that makes 0 sense. So they flew 12 hours one way with SpongeBob and Patrick torturing Squidward just to see a destination for a few moments and then fly back. What was the point then? You could have just seen Bora Bora Bottom from photos, for instance, and SpongeBob and Patrick refusing to let Squidward out at the end. That's low-level torture. They literally wanted to drag Squidward back to Bikini Bottom, screaming and kicking. Animation was really good though, 9 out of 10 on top of what I mentioned earlier with the character designs. There were a lot of great moments, including the photo shot taken at the check-in counter where they looked like real-life sea creatures, and of course Squidward was turned into an angry octopus. Patrick bouncing around the cabin after being inflated by the airbag. Why the airbag was dangling there never is explained. Perhaps it was because the airplane literally ascended 90 degrees upwards, right? Squidward managing to push the flight attendant call button using a new finger extending from his nose was kind of epic, but also a little bit disturbing. And of course, the shenanigans that went on in the cockpit towards the end of the episode. And finally, Unique Characteristics gets a 8 out of 10. I'm a little bit biased because it happens on a plane. We've never really had an episode like this. It might be an Annoy Squidward episode, but the airplane theme made it really fresh and a lot more palatable to me. What's next? Squidward going on vacation with SpongeBob and Patrick on a train? I guess that already happened in the Great Patty Caper, sort of. I mean, they technically were trying to get to Plankton, but who knows? Maybe they can make a vacation via train episode in the future. Anyways, Plain to See gets a 23 out of 30 from me. That's all for these 2 episodes. Let me know in the comments what you thought about them, and make sure to subscribe, like, keep it right here on Ultimate SpongeBob 101. I'll see you guys in the next SpongeBob video. Bye!